Welcome to Casual and Critical Cinema, where we take a look at your favorite movies through a casual and critical perspective. I'm Travis Schneider.
And I'm Alex Minton.
And we're here to look at some films.
Guardians of the Galaxy is the new Marvel film directed by James Gunn and starring Chris Pratt, Bradley Cooper, Vin Diesel, Zoe Saldana, Dave Bautista, Lee Pace, and John C. Reilly.
And Glenn Close as
Nova Prime.
Nova Prime.
Yes. Definitely her strongest performance. She has a very extensive role in the film. Top billing.
Yeah. So the premise of this film is you have a ragtag group of people that come together throughout the galaxy to fight off various issues with various villains. You got the main villain being Ronan. And
our review is going to be spoiler-free up until a certain point at which we will declare that we are beginning to discuss spoilers.
Yeah. The basic premise was this ragtag group of people, kind of like the Avengers, where in the Avengers, the difference between the Avengers and this, the Avengers had the characters that were developed over multiple films. They're more your normal hero type, rather than in Guardians of the Galaxy, the characters are all almost roguish-like characters. They're thieves or assassins, and then just kind of forcefully brought together to deal with a major threat in the universe.
Which, you mentioned that Guardians of the Galaxy doesn't have the advantage of introducing us to all these characters over the course of 6 films. They only have 1 film to do this. And I really respect how Guardians of the Galaxy and James Gunn and all the people at Marvel were able to introduce us to all these characters and give them an equal amount of screen time and make us fall in love with each one of them just as much as the other. And
that's definitely a slightly noticeable part of the film, a light weakness, I feel. I mean, you have a little less character development because you have to bring all these characters in, but because of the nature of the film and these characters, how they're kind of being forced together anyways, you don't really need to know their whole backstory of why they're there. And I actually think they did a great job bringing them all together without having origin stories for them. I was thinking about that today. We've gotten so used to in superhero movies, every movie has to have an origin story. Every character has to have an origin story, and that can really drag it down.
Which is the downfall of some superhero films like the first Amazing Spider-Man.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Amongst many other problems. But I was thinking today when I was watching it, they were able to bring in a raccoon that I'm sure a lot of people thought was just really stupid, but I know people thought that before the movie was even released. And I think while watching it, you don't even have a second thought that you're watching a raccoon shooting a gun.
Bradley Cooper is absolutely amazing as Rocket Raccoon. I could not imagine anyone else being that voice. He just becomes that character. And
the voice, doing the voice was good, as well as the overall writing and the way the character was integrated into the story.
Oh,
where it didn't feel like a forced joke character. He actually was one of the more serious characters that only some of his antics caused more of the joke.
You find there's less character development with these characters in this film because they don't have all those other movies, but I think that if you were to compare this film to just the Avengers, just that one standalone film that's an ensemble of all these superheroes, that there's more character development present within Guardians of the Galaxy than compared with that one film. Definitely. Obviously, the Avengers build-up, it has more character development because you have 10 hours more to do that.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, I would definitely agree with that. There was overall a lot more character development in this film compared to Avengers. I mean, there was just an overall, they kind of have to move through these action sequences pretty quickly because of the nature of the events that are taking place in Guardians of the Galaxy. And I don't have really a problem with that. I just noticed, you want to know more about these characters. They're very interesting, they're a really diverse group, and you want to know where they came from or why they're there, or, how they got to the point of being who they are. Because some of them are obviously abnormal or different than a normal person.
Yeah, and the film does an amazing job of getting you invested in these extraordinary and fantastical characters, and I think that's largely attributed to the fact that this film pays homage to a lot of classic '80s films that have become part of
The Expendables. A lot of homages.
No. But it has a lot of references and homages to a lot of classic films, particularly from the 80s, that, most Americans or people throughout the world are very familiar with. So all these references to Earth culture and Raiders of the Lost Ark and Star Wars make the film feel very personal and relatable in that sense, especially because Star-Lord, he grew up on Earth in the 80s, and he's now obsessed with 80s culture, and,
Actually, there was a lady in line today. I heard two old ladies talking about the movie. For some reason, I guess one of them went and saw it probably with their grandkids. And she was trying to describe the movie to the other lady, saying it wasn't as bad as she thought it would be. Not that I expected a lot of older women to be really into this type of film, but she was mentioning how there was like 70s music throughout it, and that kind of brought her into the film, made her enjoy it more. And so what you're saying is true. It helps people connect a lot more to this story, to this really fantastical story of all these crazy characters on these worlds that don't exist, with this really bizarre events going on. But then you bring in things like the 70s music and references to certain films.
The soundtrack of this film is one of the absolute strongest elements of the film. I've been thinking in comparing it to some of my other favorite soundtracks to films like Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs and other Tarantino movies and some Scorsese movies, and I honestly can't think of a movie where the soundtrack is as powerful and vital to the success of the film as the soundtrack of this film. I think that the great thing about soundtracks, especially before home media was a big thing, is that you can just listen to it, and with each song, from that point on, whenever you hear that song, you associate it with that scene in that film. Mm-hmm. And the best films are able to do that more so than others. And I've been listening to the soundtrack of this film repeatedly because I love the music and I love the film. And every time I hear these songs, it's as if I'm reliving the events of the film again and just transported to this beautiful place.
Mm-hmm. Any movie, it's like The Sound of Silence in The Graduate. And you hear a lot of Simon Garfunkel stuff that was used in The Graduate, Mrs. Robinson. A lot of people who've seen that movie now, when they hear those songs, they immediately go to scenes from that film.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So but it's got, I guess, could have both positive and negative effects depending on someone's perspective of that film. If they don't like the movie, like some other movies that are out there that probably use pretty popular songs, that could be a negative correlation. But that I don't think that's as common or as much of an issue, because if it's a low budget, they probably don't have the money to even acquire rights to use these more popular songs. But so yeah. So that was, you definitely covered the music, which everyone loves the music in that film. It's since the trailer, when they threw in that Hooked on a Feeling within the trailer, people knew it gave you the overall vibe of the film. Mm-hmm. You attach an action trailer to the song Hooked on a Feeling, and you realize it's kooky. It's a wacky story. It's not just an action film.
It's perfect. It's goofy when it needs to be, but it's also intense when it needs to be. I've been thinking, and I think this may very well be my favorite soundtrack, that of any film I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if I follow along with too many soundtracks so much as the scores. I get really into music made specifically for the film, like some of my favorites. Like
same here.
Yeah.
But and there's obviously scores that I think are far superior, like the score for Star Wars.
Yeah. But of course, that's a whole other thing. When you're making music to be used with the film, it's built for that film. It's made to connect with it directly. When you hear that song, you understand that part, that scene better while you watch the movie, as well as when you hear that song outside of the movie, you make those connections to those scenes. And it's similar to what you're saying with soundtracks. Though the soundtrack's more popular, music you hear more often. Scores aren't things you hear quite as often, but they also have a completely different style or sound to them, and sometimes it may be more emotional because they're connected to very distinct scenes.
So how did you feel about the performances in the film?
I thought
we already mentioned Rocket, and I know that I thought he was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, he was done very well. Written very well, integrated very well. The animation was fantastic. Mm-hmm. I was since this is my second viewing was today, and I was actually with the IMAX, doing the 3D thing just for some reason. But I was trying to pay special attention to the graphics as well, because nowadays the way special effects have gotten to the point, CG specifically, has gotten to the point of being almost flawless at times. So good that we don't even pay attention to how bad CG could be in films, or rather, we don't see bad CG very often unless you're watching some B movie made for like Sci-Fi. So I was looking really closely to see if I could tell a big distinction between characters like Rocket and Groot and then the rest of the cast, and you couldn't. They are integrated very well into the scenes. Mm-hmm. But beyond that, you got Groot, which your other really oddball character who's purely animated.
He seems to be most people's favorite Guardian.
Yeah, and I think it's because he's got that sort of innocent quality to him, like he's like kind of like a pet or animal.
He can be cute, but he can also be badass.
Yeah, and then he's kind of mysterious because he obviously has his own thoughts, but he just can't really relay them to people because his language is so limited. But he's a very enjoyable character. He's humorous, and I've always enjoyed the character just because I really like things usually oriented towards nature. But he was animated well. Was a great part of the film, understandably so. Why it was people's favorite character. But then, I mean, of course, with Diesel, he did the lines fine. Of course, there's only so many lines he had to do, but he had the emotion and of each line correct. How it needed to sound for each individual scene that it was used, because that's what makes the character even more interesting. Is that because his language is so limited, he only has that one line, "I am Groot," to be said throughout the film.
And I think that allows for them to play with subtext a lot more.
That, and then just the subtlety of how it's being spoke. If you're saying it like "I am Groot" or saying it "I'm Groot," there's a completely different feeling going on, like when it was said in the film. So I think that helps. I mean, that was done very well as well. But then I think all the cast did fantastic jobs.
Dave Bautista, remarkably well, especially considering it's one of his first films he's ever done.
Yeah, and people always are afraid of seeing wrestlers get into films.
And I think he does very well.
Yeah, I was highly impressed with this.
Zoe Saldana was very good in the film too. Her character's a lot more mysterious than the others, so I feel like she had a lot less direct material to work off of, but regardless of that, I do think she was a very strong, well-developed, and fascinating character.
That's true. I found it really interesting. A lot of the action scenes that she was in were done really well. I mean, I was actually going to say something earlier about the action scenes. They were all done really well. They were choreographed very nicely.
The action is absolutely amazing.
But her character's interesting. She did the character very well. And as she's supposed to be a sort of seductive but vicious character. When she did nicely.
And all the supporting cast was very enjoyable. Ronan the Accuser, while being adequate and most definitely not being the worst villain in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I think that title most definitely falls to Malekith, who was absolutely terrible in Thor: The Dark World. I feel that Ronan the Accuser is adequate, and he's he's badass in some scenes, but I don't feel like I was anywhere near as invested in him as I was the other characters in the film or other villains in the other Marvel movies, like especially Loki.
Yeah, we're given so much time with Loki over 3 films. The first film, Loki was in a lot, and there was he had more of a point. I mean, and you have this issue with a lot of movies where the villains are kind of one-sided. They don't have as much.
Which the best films have
depth to.
The best villains have more depth to them.
Of course.
The Joker in The Dark Knight and Loki and.
Yeah, maybe for giving a little bit more time with Ronan, we don't know why he's wanting to destroy the universe. Or I guess a lot of your big villains like that, they tend to be kind of that way. He just seemed. I mean, upon my second viewing, I definitely thought he was a bit more depth than I thought the first time, but it's still not a lot. He obviously has some innate hatred towards these other people, towards the people of the non-Kree race.
I do think he's very well done. He's just one of the weaker elements of this very well done film.
Yeah, sure. And hell, Nebula may even seem like she has a bit more depth to her than.
They give more to it. I mean, they say he's a Kree extremist.
Yeah.
And of course, you have to know a little bit more about the comics for that to have much meaning to you. But
yeah, of course. I mean, can always be an issue is if they rely too much on the source material, rather.
Which for the most part, I don't think they do.
No, they don't.
I think that's more just to enrich the character, and it's not vital to the.
And I've heard that some people cry more about the movie because it's not as accurate to the source material, which is always an issue with anything based off comics or books or what have you.
That doesn't particularly bother me. I like to view them as two separate things.
Well, no, so do I. I just know, like, as long as they are still feel true to the character and the story, they're not like completely divergent to the point of like the new Fantastic Four movie where they're just saying this is not related to Fantastic Four at all. We're just using the names of the characters. I mean, if you wanted that far away from a source, then you might as well just make it your own unique thing. Just stop trying to use the source for money, which is all they're doing. But with this, I mean, with Marvel, the Marvel Studios, so in general, they have not done that and has not been a problem. And overall, a lot of their stuff has been very enjoyable, especially this particular film. I really talked about Star-Lord.
Oh!
He's like the main character.
Chris Pratt as Star-Lord is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, perfect.
Him as Star-Lord, almost makes Star-Lord my favorite Guardian. It would be very hard to decide between Rocket and Star-Lord for my favorite Guardian. Mm-hmm. But Chris Pratt, he's charming, absolutely hilarious. His performance in this film gives me faith in the fan casting that's been going around of him as Indiana Jones.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I think he's a perfect hero in the film.
Mm-hmm. He's able to incorporate his humor, his style of comedy. Yes, he's not as goofy as his character on Parks and Rec, nor should he be, but he's able to incorporate a bit of that goofiness and that.
He kind of reminds me of Han Solo or Indiana Jones combined with that.
Yeah, but the character also has a sort of dark past to him that he has to incorporate into the way his character continues on in the future. That which is subtly there, and it adds into a few scenes here and there, and that gets added into that humor, and it balanced very well. I mean, I loved his character. The opening sequence of the film was amazing. That was just not even just his origin, but then just the first sequence where he's on the planet going to go find the item.
That opening sequence is absolutely amazing. The homage to Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's one of these, and the pairing with the song that plays with that. It works to invest you so much in this film because it's referencing a film that we're all familiar with and we all love, with a song that we're all familiar with and we all love, and it's a perfect introduction and it sucks you into this movie. It's actually one of my favorite scenes in the movie because it's the moment where you're like, oh, this is gonna be awesome.
yeah. Characters are great, and the casting that was done for him was fantastic. Spot on.
And what we haven't mentioned at all is this film was absolutely hilarious.
Yeah.
It's like you could call this film a comedy.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I mentioned earlier, it's kind of this. They're trying to mix that action with that goofiness, which you see in the first trailer that they were revealed when they had the Hook on the Feeling playing with all these action scenes, and some people thought this movie was going to be like a campy mess of I don't know. I guess the simple,
I never really understood where they were coming from.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the idea. Some people thought just the idea of a talking raccoon was a big deal. When you're pulling things from comic books, it ends up getting to the point where no holds barred.
It's not much worse than a Norse god and a man in a metal suit.
Man in a bat suit.
Yeah.
But yeah, our theater, the first time I saw that was like the weekend after that weekend it came out. So I guess the opening weekend. I mean, the theater was constantly laughing. Tons of scenes. Oh, yeah. And every character.
Both times I saw the film, every character has great humor in the film.
Yeah, and sometimes it's from the characters you don't expect it to say some things, but like Gamora had a couple lines that were hilarious, and then Drax did as well. And this even just or scenes of them.
The only character that doesn't really have any laughs in the movie is Ronan, and even he has a few kind of funny moments.
Yeah, I mean, by himself, I'm not sure if he pushes much with humor, but then again, as the villain that he is, he shouldn't. And he's a perfect mix of action and comedy and science fiction.
Almost definitely.
I think I heard someone say this kind of felt like. I think you mentioned this to me. You just never mentioned Star Wars. I heard someone talk about.
Oh yeah. Like when I saw the film, I felt like, is this how my parents felt when they saw Star Wars the first time? Because it's a space opera like Star Wars. There's references to Star Wars. There's obvious similarities. Star Wars, the Star Wars trilogy are three of my absolute favorite films of all time. They're what made me love film as much as I do. They're in my top 10 favorite films of all time. I'm absolutely enamored with that trilogy and that universe, and this experience felt very similar to the first time seeing Star Wars, and I was just transported to this other world, and it was absolutely amazing. Yeah.
Oh, should definitely. And I also heard someone mention it being similar to Firefly, which I could really see.
It's mostly, I've heard several comparisons.
You have a lot of like these humorous characters, ragtag team that kind of come together, and I think that was actually a really good comparison, and maybe one way that we kind of have a sort of Firefly-esque, series to live.
Luckily, the comic's pretty good right now.
John C. Reilly as actually, I'm not sure if he's supposed to be Roman Day or if when I saw it today, they said a different name, but. He's a small role as this Nova officer that was.
He's really barely in the film.
Yeah,
he's enjoyable in the 2 or 3 scenes he has.
Yeah, and it's pretty much the same with Glenn Close. But I guess you have Benicio del Toro as the Collector.
Yeah, I mean, he's even better than he's even bigger than those.
Yeah. I mean, and he his small role was perfect. The guy who plays Yondu, who also, even though I think it's maybe a different take on Yondu.
I enjoyed Michael
kind
Rooker
of like a space redneck.
I mean, he felt kind of like all the other characters Michael Rooker plays. Maybe this one's a bit more comedic than the others, and less of an ass. But I thought he was very enjoyable in the role.
Oh yeah, definitely. So, all right, I guess we can go up to our spoiler-filled sequence.
Okay, so spoiler alert. Alert!
Spoilers!
That's probably just a drill. We were discussing The Collector, and I just had to bring this up. Most of the music in the film is from the 80s, but there are a few 70s songs, and I absolutely love the how they have the David Bowie song when they're arriving at nowhere and they're meeting the Collector. Because
which song?
Because the Collector, I find his style to be visually, kind of 70s, and like that being paired with that was an excellent introduction to the character and the location of nowhere.
Oh yeah. Definitely. I mean, with that quirkiness that he has, he's a serious character, but like he's obviously very obsessed with what he does.
Obsessed.
Yes. Yeah. I was going to mention that. I mean, that was him doing that was a perfect fit of his character, but then Rocket playing off of it and mocking him was another perfect addition of a character addition there, and more level of humor to add to it. But even though Benicio del Toro hasn't had a large role necessarily, his character is perfect. I mean, fantastic.
Oh yeah. Right after Star-Lord, Gamora, Groot, and Rocket are abducted by the Nova Corps, the Nova Corps has them in these yellow laser things, which then dissolve into the Nova Corps symbol on the Nova Corps headquarters. And I just found that to be a very classy, well-done transition that really pulls you from one scene to the next. It reminded me a lot of Kubrick's Dissolves in The Shining. Like how he would have the Overlook Hotel's top dissolve into a ladder.
It creates a nice transition from one scene to the next where you know what going into something else, like what you're being led into rather than just being a solid cut. So it's a smoother transition off.
But it's also visually connected.
Yes. Visually connected. Visually connected.
They're dissolving into each other.
Visually.
See, that's what I'm doing.
Connected. Dissolving in. Visually connected.
My fingers are editing the film. So, ask me what I thought about Thanos.
So I was thinking about Howard the Duck. Breathtaking in this film. Cannot believe that he was just amazing.
Seth Green's performance.
Strongest character. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Spot on. Yeah. Oscar worthy. This is my nominee, my pick
it's
for
an
the
Oscar
year.
pick?
Oscar pick for the year.
Wow.
Seth Green as Howard the Duck.
Best supporting
Mark
actor.
my words. Best supporting actor. This is going to win the best movie.
Well, I hope not, because because usually the last film wins Best Picture. Like the last Lord of the Rings movie.
Well, this is going to win all of them. All three of them.
It won
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Well, see, the last Guardians of the Galaxy won Best Picture. I mean,
it did.
I mean the
last Star Wars.
No, because they're making another one. There hasn't been a last one yet. It's always the last one. The last Lord of the Rings won Best Picture. The last Godfather Part 2 won Best Picture. Because Godfather Part 3 never happened.
So another little subtle character, or not subtle character, but a character who wasn't in the movie as much, was
Thanos!
That they're moving on to
Thanos!
bring him in later on into a bigger part in the bigger later movies was Thanos, and I think he has something he wants to say about this character.
Okay, so Thanos is my favorite Marvel villain. He's my second favorite villain in comics in general. The Infinity Gauntlet is my second favorite graphic novel of all time.
All time.
Of all time! It's amazing. Next to The Dark Knight Returns. Anyway, I absolutely love Thanos. Josh Brolin as Thanos is absolutely amazing. Because of my love of the character, the scenes with Thanos, like whenever he was on the two scenes he's in, I would just lean forward and I would be like, okay, I'm here for you, baby. I'm here, Thanos.
I wasn't that engaged.
It's done. It's done.
I enjoyed the small scenes with Thanos, but I knew that he wasn't the primary character, primary villain. They weren't doing much with him yet.
The monologue that Thanos has at the end of his first scene is so badass. I really need to memorize that monologue. It's so awesome. It's so Thanos. And the second scene he's in, he's not actually there. It's the hologram, but that's such a delightful homage to the appearance of the Emperor in The Empire Strikes Back.
I think in Star Wars, though, I thought it was kind of like a hologram just projected into space, not on a wall. Maybe
Well, yeah.
Maybe I think, okay. I haven't done a while since I watched them. But,
It should be, fixed. You should watch the trilogy at least once a year. Despite what How I Met Your Mother says. It says 3 years. It should be every 1 year.
Special effects were fantastic. Nothing wrong there. I mean,
Wow.
I really get into the space. When you see the spaceships and then the battle scenes there, all of the space battles were really cool. That one and then the final battle against Ronan's ship.
The end battle I love because it feels so much like the climax of a Star Wars film, in the sense that in Empire Strikes Back you have the one conflict, you have Luke and Vader fighting, and then you have Leia, 3PO, R2, Chewie, and Lando trying to escape from Bespin.
I can see the similarities.
Yeah, the divided battle at the end I felt was very enjoyable, and it added a lot to the film to me, just because of how much I love Star Wars.
Yeah.
And that's similar to the endings of the Star Wars films. And the one, we haven't talked about the post-credit scene yet, Howard the Duck.
Howard the Duck.
And I'm just glad to see the Master of Quack Fu on the screen, on the big screen again.
I will admit, I was kind of hoping for some sort of teaser at the end of the movie.
I like as much. Okay, most of the comedic post-credit scenes have been very funny, and this is one of the funnier ones, I think. But I've been spoiled by the great, seeing Nick Fury for the first time, seeing Thanos for the first time, seeing the Collector for the first time, seeing the Tesseract for the first time. I want to see stuff like that.
It's something that lets you know what the next step is for Guardians.
Yeah.
Could be the next step. What's his doubtful?
Or just for the franchise.
Yeah, exactly. They teased Guardians of the Galaxy with Thor 2.
Yeah.
With when they visited the Collector in that movie, and that would be nice. I mean, I don't mind the post-credits humor one. Like they did. Which one was it? I guess it was the Avengers.
The first
Thanos, you had Thanos as your.
But you got both. That's why that was
exactly,
great.
And that's what they should do. It should be one
and
comedy one and one.
They also did that with Thor.
And that, of course, Thanos got a lot of people excited for whatever. We knew they were pushing.
Thanos.
Yeah, they were pushing more towards the cosmos of Marvel. And the Marvel cosmic stuff is just amazing. I mean, there's so much they could do with it that a lot of people don't even know anything about. Because unless you read Marvel comics, you probably don't know much about the Marvel cosmic stuff like Silver Surfer.
By the way, Silver the Surfer is absolutely amazing right now. It's one of the best comics I've been reading lately.
It's it. I mean, a lot of the new Marvel stuff I've really enjoyed. I've only really been follow heavily with Silver Surfer when I read some of the Ghost Rider, which was great, and first issue of Moon Knight was fantastic, but I'd like to read more of it. With our rating system, what do you rate Guardians of the Galaxy?
I don't understand our rating system.
It's 5 Keatons. 5 Michael Keatons is the maximum you can get here on Casual&CriticalCinema.
Okay.
Or because Keatons for you is different.
It would be 5 Buster Keatons.
5 Buster Keatons.
5 Buster Keatons, 5 Diane Keatons.
Yeah, Keatons in general is our rating. Yes, but whenever you need to do a fraction, since he can play multiple roles.
Yeah.
Eddie Murphy's. It's a Murphy.
Yeah.
A fraction of a point is a Murphy.
And there's no doubt in my mind that this is a 5 Keaton film. I love superhero films. This is next to the Dark Knight trilogy is my favorite superhero film. It's my favorite Marvel movie. It's in my top 100 of all time. I absolutely love this movie. I give it 5 Keatons.
I think I would give it 4 Keatons and 1 Murphy. I really enjoyed it, but for some reason, movies like the Avengers, and maybe not Avengers so much as Captain America, Winter Soldier, and Dark Knight still stand out to me. I don't know if it's the style of story that's being told, maybe more grounded to a degree, but I really love this movie as well. It's just I didn't quite stand as high amongst some of the other comic book movies that I enjoy even more. But I think 4.5. 4 Keatons and 1 Murphy is not bad.
4 Keaton and a Murphy isn't bad at all.
No, it's not bad.
It's not bad at all. Not too shabby.
No.
There's not any shabby.
Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey. 2001: A Space Odyssey. 2001: A Space Odyssey. You can just go through those 3 choose when you like when you got the video.
2001: A Space Odyssey. 2001. A Space Odyssey.
2001. Space Odyssey.
2001.
Da.
A Space Odyssey. Whoa! Copyright music. 2001.
Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey. Classic sci-fi. It's actually a little bit
I thought it was kind of shitty.
almost beyond a science fiction film. Because that seems to question evolution in life.
Are we in the movie?
I thought we were.
Oh, okay.
You're the one being over there being a dumbass.
I'm not. So Travis,
So Alex,
how many Stanley Kubrick films have you seen?
a few. I know what you're about to say.
I've seen them all. Okay. No, seriously.
Not relevant.
Which Stanley Kubrick films have you seen?
I've seen this. I've seen The Shining. A Clockwork Orange. I think that's it. Unless I'm forgetting one.
And I have seen all of his features, and I think this is one of his best.
Mm-hmm. I only saw it for us to do this review for the first time. I've been wanting to see it for years, and I was extremely impressed with it.
And you still only seen it the one time?
Yes.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
I've seen it twice. Once with commentary, once without commentary.
For one, the movie is visually stunning. I mean, the colors. I mean, I'm glad the first time I saw it was on Blu-ray because everything was crisp. The colors were fantastic. The overall way he shot the scenes were very impressive. You're able to take.
I mean, the way Kubrick shoots every
almost.
scene is impressive.
But we're talking about this movie.
I know, but I'm just saying all of his films have that quality.
I mean, what it's about is kind of hard to explain. I mean, it's about space travel, and there's some sort of almost like a meta. Like it's something that this movie is trying to say beyond just people traveling in space. Something about life and evolution. It starts off on like a prehistoric Earth with kind of humanoid apes on the verge of discovering the ability to use tools and the ability to hurt each other. And that leads into this future of people using tools at sort of the finest. Our ability to now be able to space travel, and it's a very interesting idea of how humans can go from a point of using just prehistoric materials to then being able to travel in space and communicate to each other via long distances and all kinds of different things that technology has allowed us.
The points of the entire opening sequence with the dawn of man is to show that throughout history, I mean, technology is always important, and they're discovering some of the first technology when he uses the bone as a weapon, and even you see the when he tosses the bone into an area, it cuts into the
ship,
into the satellite with the nuclear missiles. And so it's a weapon cutting to a weapon. It's one form of technology cutting to another for a similar purpose.
Now, what helps kind of almost break this movie beyond science fiction is the monolith, the black monolith that seems to travel through space and show up in different events. And I've heard someone mention that it's almost like a godlike figure in the way it kind of almost prods life along. Like during the time of evolution, the prehistoric man that we see, how they lived, and then after the monolith appeared, kind of sparked their curiosity, and all of a sudden, shortly thereafter, you see them starting to use tools and everything. And I've heard that that the monolith has some sort of metaphor, I guess, meaning.
Well, yeah. I think it's supposed to represent divinity as well as just simply extraterrestrial beings. But the interesting thing, you earlier outside of the review, you mentioned the cyclical nature of the film.
Yeah.
And I think that's it's interesting how once he enters the Stargate, a lot of the visuals are fantastical and extraordinary, and something you would never see in a normal environment. But then you see those begin to blend into all these very natural Earth landscapes, and to me, it's trying to show how Earth at its simplest is comparable to Earth's finest achievements, such as finding extraterrestrial life.
And the production of that one space, obviously. What was I think so interesting about that whole cyclical nature of the film is how it starts off as sort of an origin of life and ends with another sort of origin of life. I mean, it's very interesting.
Like at the end, he's almost transcending life.
Yes, he's transcending life.
Yeah. Actually, he is.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah. And somehow he's able to. It seems to be reborn.
The first time I saw this film, I felt it was very pessimistic in its portrayal of humanity and humanity's interactions with technology and development, because this cyclical nature of the film made me feel as if it made me feel as if the film was trying to say that humanity was in this circle of, they strive for technological advancement and discovery, but then they end up being destroyed. I mean, you see man creates Hal, and Hal is one of their finest technological achievements, and then that ends up destroying them. And then you see him going, and at the end of the film, when he sees himself, you then see him go through all these stages in his life, going in a circle, and then he the way I interpreted it the first time is when he becomes this other being, this large infant-like creature. The imagery of the infant made me think of him as an almost lesser being. Obviously, he's larger and he's powerful or in some way, but he appears to be childlike and ignorant in a way, which I feel is also referencing the beginning of the film when the beginnings of a species and the.
I see. And we're back. Still 2001 Space Odyssey. You can copy me. You can copy me. Was that your favorite movie opinion? Okay. We got us our pizza.
Okay,
some refreshments.
Now we can get to the less important things. So, second time I saw the film, I got a lot more optimistic feel from it, and just the fact that he was transcending all of mankind's previous accomplishments at the end. It really contrasted my initial response to the film.
I'm noticing he's adding the word transcend a lot. It's because this past year, one of his favorite films was Transcendence. He said he was blown away by it. It brought a lot of questions about technology.
It's obviously the best film of the year. Transcendence easily gets 5 Keatons.
5 Keatons. 5 Keatons and 5 Murphys.
5 Keatons, but even though it's a piece of shit that was almost unbearable to watch, I give it 1 Keaton.
We're not reviewing this now, are we?
But, well, no, I'm talking about 2001.
Yeah, this is a piece of shit. 1 Keaton.
Yeah, I don't see why it's...
2 Murphys, though. 2 Murphys.
That is 2 Murphys. But I'd rather have 1 Keaton than 2 Murphys.
1.5 Murphys.
2.5 Murphys. That's my favorite TV show. That's a fake laugh.
Reference.
I understood that reference.
Okay.
What? Do you have anything to say about 2001?
There's one thing that bothered me about this movie that I couldn't get over once I finished the film. As mind-blowing as the experience was, I just couldn't believe that the director or writer would just forget about this particular thing. It was a big plot hole. It's along the lines of some of the classic cinema plot holes, especially things like The Room that is full of them. Everyone knows about the whole breast cancer thing. This is just online with that. Basically, at one point in this movie, this guy who just goes to space gets off like a sort of space aircraft. He's talking on a video camera to his video feed to his daughters who's still on Earth. And the following day, it's her birthday, and he's not going to be there for her birthday. And she should be really upset and everything else. And there's more that's going to happen to his daughter. This is going to be a traumatic experience for her. her dad is going to be gone for a long time now that he's in space, and the movie just leaves off, doesn't even explain it, doesn't go any farther with it.
It's really tragic.
Yeah, it skips her entire birthday experience, and I guess in a way it's genius though, because just like her dad, we miss her birthday. So I mean, I guess in that way, Kubrick is a genius.
It is genius. He wants us to be feeling the same. It's
to
like
realize that going to space, we miss out
that,
on human experiences.
Exactly. It's like that great sequence at the beginning of Hidden Fortress where Toshiro Mifune's character and the Banquo equivalent are exploring the woods, and it gets lost, and it seems to be pointless, and you realize the reason behind that is Kurosawa wants you to feel just as frustrated as those characters.
Exactly. It's the same thing. Same thing. So I guess in that way, it's not such a big problem.
But no, it is the most tragic element of the film, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, who cares about this, you know, vengeful AI, Hal? Who cares about that? You've got, a daughter whose father's not there for her fucking birthday.
Yeah, Vivian Kubrick, her birthday's important.
So, aside from that, the cinema of the film was fantastic.
Oh, no,
a classic masterpiece. Loved it. Visually stunning.
Can we talk about Hal for a minute? Because Hal is amazing in this film. He is one of the most menacing and chilling villains I've ever seen in a film.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's probably, I'm guessing, because I'm not familiar with all the science fiction of this time period that was created, but that was probably one of the first times AI was used as a sort of villain, as the AI is transcending humanity and is wanting to take control of humanity, that doesn't want its own existence to be snuffed out. And in other instances, other movies or stories, the AI thinks they can do things better than humans and wants to control them. And this is one of the first times we see it, and it was done fantastically. I mean,
marvelous.
It was definitely one of your best classic villains. You don't even realize early on that he's a villain. That is a villain. But yeah.
I think another thing that adds a lot to the cyclical nature of the film is just the visuals present throughout the film. Like like you'll see the horizon of a planet, and then you'll see the sun rising over it, or you'll see another planet going up over it, and then you'll see stuff like that with just like objects in the film too. Like you'll see the round pod going up above a surface or something, and circling around it, and also the Discovery itself, the spaceship they're on for the latter portion of the film, it itself revolves.
That's true. And you have a lot of revolution within the film.
And you say you want a revolution. Yeah.
I like to talk about my revolution.
Yeah. Two references.
We're reference masters over here.
Reference masters.
It's badass over here.
It's reference madness. Without a doubt, 2001: A Space Odyssey is one of the greatest films from one of the greatest directors of all time. It's one of my favorite films. I give it.
Becoming one of mine.
I easily give it 5 Keatons.
5 Keatons. 5
Keatons.
Masterful Keatons.
One of the best movies ever made. Fantastic.
Yes.
Now, if you thought 2001: A Space Odyssey was a classic, boy, are you in for a real treat.
You sure are.
Because we're about to review the classic science fiction film. Really changed the genre. Even the special effects, even better than 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Better than Guardians of the Galaxy.
Better than Guardians of the Galaxy, even. And
more believable story. Better acting.
We're of course
higher quality overall cinematography and filming.
We're of course speaking to the classic
Voyage to the Prehistoric Planet. Did I say that right?
Starring Basil Rathbone. And I did not like this movie.
Oh, it was. I thought it was a masterpiece. Oh well, sorry, he doesn't like masterpiece film work.
No, I only like good movies. That's why I didn't enjoy this film very much at all. For a bad movie to be enjoyable for me, it has to be like really, really bad, like the Nicolas Cage Wicker Man or The Room. And this film is not quite that bad. It's just
so it has redeemable value, is what he's saying. There is something to it that you can enjoy in some way.
I'm saying
not so bad that it's funny.
It's not as bad as The Room. Is the best thing I'm saying about it.
The movie, Voyage to the Prehistoric Planet, is actually I don't know what you call this type of movie. I think they used to...
A bad one?
No. They used to do. It was the original Russian movie called Planet of Burr that the American filmmaker decided to use cuts or scenes from actually almost the entire movie, as far as we know. Used most of that movie and then added in some American scenes, or scenes with an American actor, to make it more appealing to an American crowd.
Kind of like Power Rangers?
I guess so. I guess it's kind of like that, except you even have more of the original footage, which is dubbing. Like very, very obvious dubbing. I mean, the reason I enjoy watching some of these movies, these very old movies, is to kind of get the idea of how people used to look at science fiction and space travel and other planets, as goofy as they usually are. There's a lot of goofy things in this one.
But even the goofier elements weren't terribly interesting to me.
They were for me. I mean,
what about this film interested? Like, what did you find it to be particularly interesting, or?
Seeing how they try to pull off certain effects, when even though they're done badly.
So from a technical standpoint, you found it amusing.
That's one way. Like, you see a lot of stuff like that. And you see weird shots and things. Like there was a scene where they're in their little space car, whatever you want to call it. It's really goofy looking with a big bubble on it, like a lot of old science fiction type things or vehicles. And they're traveling over water. And when you see it cut from the side, you see the water move in the background, or whatever, like they're driving. And then whenever you see it at the same moment, when you see an above shot, the water is completely still and they're going nowhere. And then they go back to show them from the side, looks like they're moving, you cut back up, they're not moving anymore. And little things like that are awfully amusing. And there's some really cheesy lines in the way they try to throw in some action and get into fight with these alien creatures.
I'm very rarely amused by low quality special effects because I'm usually trying to get immersed in the story. That I look past that and I mentally just acknowledge that it's just they're working with what technology they have.
And they probably were.
Like a lot of people would find like the original Star Trek series to be the special effects to be laughable at times, but I don't really find them that laughable because I'm so invested in the characters and the story.
And I can understand that, but when a movie's story is so simple and almost kind of broken, then you have a chance to look at even the bad special effects as long as it's going with the story.
I mean, you notice them more, but I don't find them particularly amusing.
Maybe that's what it is. You notice it more. Like there's some things that you'll see a lot more often. But even then, I mean,
and it feels like there's only a few shots that use heavy special effects. Like there's a tentacle monster in like one very brief scene.
There's the flower type thing at the beginning that's trying to eat.
Yeah, but it's in the film very briefly.
But it's even but it's also the way that they interact with these things, or like cut to these certain scenes where he's getting attacked by it. Is just, they act like it's no big deal either that he's getting attacked by this creature.
The one amusing thing I can say it is amusing how nonchalantly they respond to certain terrible events.
Yes, yeah, they're just kind of like, oh yeah, I just got attacked, I almost got killed. No big deal.
I'll admit that was rather amusing.
A couple times, and then their robot they had was pretty amusing because it was really bulky, and they're supposed to use it for travel purposes.
It was kind of like the robot from Rocky IV, wasn't it?
Probably. I mean, it barely moved. I mean, it was supposed to move, and then it had these weird grip type things on its toes, like bent crowbars, that supposedly, I'm guessing, was supposed to help the robot be able to grip rock while it was walking. But if you actually looked at how they moved, all they did was go up and down, and they couldn't actually wrap around anything. They were completely useless, but they tried to make it look like they actually had to use. And I thought that was kind of funny. But I also like watching movies with these older science fiction things where they have these cheesy special effects. And
I mean, I like watching older movies that like if I think they're going to be good, I don't want to watch it just because it's old. I like to see like maybe an older perspective on science fiction, or older perspective on space travel. Which you can see that with 2001: A Space Odyssey just came out 3 years later, and that definitely gives you insight of people's view of
the future
of the future and things like that in 1968.
Oh, true. And so obviously better representation.
And just a year after that, Star Trek does a similar thing in a far more in a much better done fashion. And in a far more entertaining fashion.
Yeah, well, the farther back you go, you start seeing a similar concept, like with the big bubble helmets and stuff like that, through older science fiction, and a lot of usually cheesy stuff and odd looks or perspectives on the future. At the very least, if you look like those having cheesy sci-fi effects and old movies to see how they looked at things, you can maybe look it up. You can. It's actually I think free to watch in a lot of places because it's part of the public
It's like
domain.
if you like sci-fi but you don't want to see a good sci-fi.
You just want a quick, cheesy.
If you want to see the genre not excelling.
There you go. Yep. So, so I guess that will give you our reviews, our ratings of that one.
I give it 1 Keaton and 1 Murphy. I'm only tacking the Murphy on there because there are a few moments where they nonchalantly respond to terrible events. They're mildly amusing, but apart from that, the film did very little for me.
Yeah. Just for. I'd give it to, since we're on a 5 system, this is below halfway at 2 Keatons, because I enjoy these old sci-fi flicks and the cheesy special effects. But I mean, definitely it's not something that's going to stand out like as this masterpiece of cinema.
If you enjoy this, feel free to share it, to like us, subscribe to us.
Yeah, we're hoping to keep doing these pretty regularly each piece or each episode. Each episode we hope to cover a new release in cinema and then a couple old movies, good and bad, as you've seen here today. Mm-hmm. And that's casual and classic cinema. Or excuse me.
And that.
Casual and critical cinema.
And that's the idea. That should be our closing line every time.
That's the idea.
And that's the idea. I make my personal matter. You see, you fucked up the chair.
You move the chair! Fix the fucking chair! You're going to ruin our reviews! I can't stand this!
The pig has hair!
And that's our
Yeah!